Hey everybody, welcome to it, the last day of the first weekend of LCS and also Super Bowl Sunday. This is Matt Tebow with Stack.gg, and I am joined here today by Nick Phan, the general manager of FlyQuest. Welcome to it. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I like the Patriots jersey you got on it.
Yeah, thanks. I'll give you bonus points if you can tell me what number, whose it is by the end of the
Oh,
video.
I'm not gonna guess that. There's too many players that have come and gone through the organization. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you give me a hint on what year, then then maybe I can
I'll give you
throw
three
something
hints.
together for you.
Doesn't play for the team anymore. Was Tom Brady's
Okay.
go-to guy for a long time, and he's
Okay.
notorious for a couple drops in the Super Bowl.
Oh, there's too many of these guys, man.
Oh, that hurts. Yeah.
uh, I'm a Seahawks fan myself, so I don't
hmm
pay too much attention to the Patriots. So it might be more of an obscure guy to me than it might be to you. Are you a Pats fan
Yeah,
yourself?
absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. And just for like with any franchise, as the general manager of FlyQuest, I wanted to get your input on just the team in general. We were talking about this before the interview, but much of the league has gone through this like really significant
hmm
overhaul, like teams like TSM, TL a little bit, and especially FlyQuest. So I wanted to get your input on what you feel about this FlyQuest roster in particular.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for the development that we're undertaking with this roster. I think when people think about FlyQuest's resurgence, obviously we went through a pretty big overhaul in our branding as well as with our roster in 2020. Achieved results that I think we could only dream of, and I think all of those things came together. And then some things happened in the off season that really changed our direction, at least competitively. And so instead of the mainstays that people were kind of familiar with us for, with Santorin and Power of Evil and Turtle and Ignar, we sort of changed course and brought in a lot of new faces that I think you know regardless of being a results oriented fan observer or someone on the team side or someone in media. I think we're showing some good things. I think there's things that we do really need to clean up, but I think by the time summer comes around, a lot of the things that you know are mistakes or mishaps or do look shaky currently, I think we're going to clean up a lot of those things, and I'm really hopeful for where we can be when it really counts.
Of course. And is are those cleaning up those mistakes so that you guys can become this really fully fledged unit? Is that one of the draws to you about creating this brand new roster, pulling a bunch of people together?
I will say working with more veteran heavy rosters comes with its own level of stressors and its own pros and cons. Working with a team that if you look at our team, you have Johnson who's in his second year in the LCS, coming from having played maybe like four academy games on TSM previously. You have Diamond and Palafox who have not yet broken in the LCS, so they're prime rookies here. You have Josedeodo who's been playing in minor regions and finally gets a shot at a major region, and then you have Licorice who's never been cast in the role of veteran mentor leader, and of course like leadership comes in so many different sizes and shapes, and a vocal leader isn't necessarily the only form of leadership. But you're casting him in a role that he's never had to necessarily play on another team. So I think it creates its own set of challenges, but it also creates a lot of fun because I think there's a lot of things that you take for granted working with more veteran rosters where it's like the game is already expected to play it a certain way. And the rules and the guidelines for which those kind of teams play are a little more set in stone. Whereas I think we have, the trials and tribulations and the difficulties of trying to figure out what our style of play is and kind of balancing that and like what's right and wrong. We get to figure that out together. So it's been fun working with these guys for the past month, and I'm excited to continue to keep going.
Of course. On the subject of Jose Deodo, what initially got your attention of him? That's a weird way to phrase that, but like,
Sure.
how'd you guys come across him, and like, what made you guys decide, okay, we want to pursue this guy like really aggressively and get him into the LCS?
Yeah, I think scouting for a lot of teams in general, especially on Western regions, I think has a long way to go. I wouldn't say that we're perfect by any means, but when we were going through iterations for looking at junglers, um, specifically with Josedeodo, we kind of compared him to some of the players that you could find in, the TCL, some of the minor regions in Asia, also looking at OPL junglers, and then comparing them to the current, spread of North American junglers to see, you know, one, I think, especially when rebuilding new teams, it's important to have some sort of veterancy in your support and jungle specifically. But if those are hard to find, I think you have to go in a different direction with it. And I think when we looked at Jose, we found a combination of uh, game sense just being really, really high, surprisingly for a player that like if you're not always competing against the best talent, sometimes it's hard to intangibly learn some of those habits or sometimes develop some of those things that some of the top players are doing. So if you look at guys like, you know, Karsa or Clid, that a lot of these younger junglers will take after, not being able to compete against them and firsthand experiencing being, abused by some of their strategies, it's sometimes hard. But for someone like Josedeodo, who is such a student of the game in his own right. He's able to pick up a lot of things very quickly, and just has a great feel for the game. So that was something that we noticed intangibly at the get go. Besides just obviously being very high up on the NA solo queue ladder, being mechanically gifted and playing, the Lee Sin, the Evelyn, and all these champions, he can play just a plethora of different champions. So it occurred to us that if there wasn't a jungler that we felt really, really comfortable with on the market currently, that he was our best shot. And we were just excited by what we saw. So that's why we kind of took the leap with him.
Of course. And to jump that ladder a little bit, Josedeodo has brought pretty much a legion of LLA fans over to the LCS. And I wanted to know what it's like to start garnering that like international fan base and audience. And I also, tying into that, I wanted you to talk about a little bit your Spanish co-stream starting on the FlyQuest Twitch channel, and whether that was a driving force or whether you guys were planning on doing that for a while.
Yeah, so I think in a lot of ways when we are constructing competitive rosters, you do have to think about the consequences, good or bad, of X player or Y player. And so when we knew that we were going into 2021 with somewhat of a rebuild, we also had to think about, okay, how do we make this team marketable, right? And I think I'm lucky to have people like our CEO Trisha, our COO Michael, and our VP of content Ricky, who are able to help create some of our own IP. So like that Spanish co-stream is now we've launched that since Friday, and it's such a fun idea, such a creative idea. When I first thought of bringing Josedeodo over, just independently, I was like, okay, if we're gonna have to rebuild, this gives us an opportunity to create a lot of different media opportunities that we otherwise maybe wouldn't have, and maybe that helps bring attention to our team in ways that you normally wouldn't have with rebuilds, right? Because if you're bringing in players that are not as well known as like your Bjergsons, your Double Ifs, your Power of Evils, your Santorans, you have to find other ways. And so it was great that myself and the rest of our team were on the same page about creating these opportunities. And I wouldn't say it was like, yo, let's get Josedeodo because we can do this, but it was like we have Josedeodo. Think of all the possibilities we can create with this, and the Spanish Coast Stream, among some of the other things that we plan on doing that I'll let our team spoil later down the line. We have the opportunity to do that, and it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. Can you give me any hints on what those opportunities are going to involve, at least?
I can't. I mean, I think what's nice about what I do and what's nice about what the rest of our team does is I pride myself, and I think everybody else does too on our team, on not really having too many leaks. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but if you look around the media, like FlyQuest doesn't leak a whole lot, and when we drop surprises, they truly are received as surprises. And I think a lot of the things that we've been launching in 2020 and the start of this year 2021 have been received really well because people have no idea what we're coming up with, and that's kind of the excitement with it. Because as we've launched this co-stream, I think over the weekend we've seen some dialogue on social media of like other teams like, oh, maybe we should try something similar, like maybe Golden Guardians wants to do something with Spanish co-streams now that they have Newbie, and they're like, oh wow, look at what FlyQuest did. Can we maybe come up with something like that? And I'm sure That a lot of teams are looking at some of the creative ways that we're coming up with ideas and coming up with different activations and IP and thinking, how can we tap into some of that for ourselves? So would rather not spoil it so that, we can kind of blaze that trail.
For sure. To change gears a little bit, you talked about having that international audience and kind of scouting out that international talent as well. Of course, Travis Gafford broke the news a little while ago about owners potentially asking Riot to lift the import rule, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that, like how it could affect NA as well as several other smaller regions. There we go. And
Sure.
what that could mean for LCS and smaller leagues as well.
Sure. I don't think I want to spend too much time on the topic. Maybe in this setting, in a different format, maybe it's a better dialogue and
Mm-hmm.
have more people around to discuss that with. But what I would say is, I don't necessarily think that lifting the import rules will solve whoever those individuals are that requested that. I don't know. I don't think that's going to solve, I guess, the issues that come up with having certain roster import restrictions, right? Um, Obviously, Riot has kind of rolled out the red carpet for OPL imports to now be considered residents in North America. And maybe the suggestion, or what I'd love to see in the future, is potentially opening up more minor regions to be considered residents for major regions in general, not just for North America, but for, your CB laws, your LLAs, your OPLs and some of the minor regions elsewhere, like for them to be able to start having accessibility on major regions as residents. I think that would help the discoverability of a lot of talent. So I think like that's probably the biggest issue right now is discoverability for a lot of especially NA amateur talent and NA academy talent. Is the discoverability and the exposure is severely lacking up till now. And I think Proving Grounds has an opportunity to really shape how we see that talent. But at least in the interim, if we were able to, over the next couple of years, create more accessibility for minor regions, I think that does a better service to us than just creating no import restrictions whatsoever. Now, if we wanted to do a full-on global league, let's say like LCK, LPL, NA and EU combined all together, then maybe there's an argument for that. But for the time being, I would love, just as we're doing, just as Golden Guardians is doing, and teams like Immortals is doing as well. I would love for us to find ways to give opportunities to some of these younger NA players that, with an import restriction being lifted, probably wouldn't immediately see those opportunities come to fruition. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Of course. Thank you for that. And that's it for me. You got any ideas on who this jersey is, or is it blanking? I'll give you 3 seconds.
It's blanking, man. I'm like, I think his name is like Matt something, but I'm blanking. Am I close?
Wes Welker.
Wes Welker. Oh man. Okay.
Yeah,
that's a very well known name. See, I'm blanking. I'm just blanking, man.
happens.
I'm sorry.
Well, we'll see whether Tom Brady can pull off the magic tonight. Once again, this is Matt Table with Stack.gg. You can follow us on our socials at StackedLOL. Once again, FlyQuest General Manager Nick Phan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thanks for having me, man. Have a good one.